Hi, I'm Dr. Anna Baranowsky, and I'm really delighted to be speaking with Gemma Burford, who's in the UK today. She is an author and a scholar and has an interesting background, having married into a Maasai family in Tanzania. And has some children, I think 2 children, right?
That's right, yeah, two daughters.
Lovely. And she's talking with us from the UK today, and she has developed an interesting program called Traveling Light, and I think that has been very inspired by your own life events and what you've experienced in your work in Tanzania, and also you're doing some very, very interesting work on helping young women, and I think that is a big piece of your work as well, and kind of changing the political landscape from what I understand too, in terms of the particular work that you're doing, and that's NGO work, right?
Yeah, at the moment I'm involved as an advisor to the NGO, so less directly involved than I used to be, but we still have a program which runs a school in Tanzania.
Lovely. And I just want to say that this is such an interesting program. You've got a 4-step Traveling Light program, and it starts with reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with your creativity, reconnecting with community, and reconnecting with emotions. And from your website, you say these 4 keys, you'll unlock the vast treasure trove of deep love and well-being that's already within you. It lights you up inside and makes you feel fully alive. Now, because of a lot of the trauma work I do, that kind of 4-prong approach, enlivening yourself with these beautiful elements, just seems so beautiful and inspired. Can you talk a little bit about your experience and how you were inspired to create this kind of a program?
Sure, yeah, I mean this grew out of really the work that I did in Tanzania, as you say, when I was living with indigenous communities, and just noticing the connection with nature and the very creative lifestyles, very, very close-knit communities that people lived in, which is so different, such a contrast from the individualistic lifestyle that we have here in the West. Everything is kind of directed towards the community. And then through that, people were able to be much more connected to their emotions, because they have what I've now recently started calling the 3-strand safety net. And so you're able, when you have a deep connection to nature, creativity, and community, you're able to actually go into difficult emotions much more easily because you've got that support. And so having lived in this very connected, interconnected Tanzanian community, then to come back to the UK where this was missing was really, in the first place, very difficult and very challenging to sort of readjust to British life. I had this sort of phase of reverse culture shock that lasted for a few years. And so then gradually was able to start coming back to some of these things with the help of a spiritual counsellor that I saw in the UK, in a place called Hove. And so the program has sort of evolved really over the past 7 years. I hadn't realised it was as long as that, but yeah, over the past 7 years since I came back from Tanzania.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it was probably a huge culture shock for you to leave a community that's so well woven, and come to a culture that's not like all of our Western cultures. They're not very well known for our embracing community spirit. And a lot of people, and because I do so much trauma work, a lot of people that I work with, talk about their isolation and sense of disconnection and their feelings of extreme loneliness, and something that I call traumatic loneliness, which is really when you've felt that you've faced difficult things and somehow either there's been a human element or a sense of betrayal or a disconnection from community, leaving you feeling very exposed and vulnerable.
Definitely, yeah, that was, I think, the hardest thing really. I mean, I came back and we were lucky in that we were living with my parents initially, so we weren't having to sort of live on our own, myself and my daughters. But even that, having got used to living in a very, very vibrant community. I didn't live in the village itself. I lived in the city of Arusha, but we had a big house which we shared with lots of members of the extended family. There were always people sort of drifting in and out. The sort of common core, if you like, was my sister-in-law and her two children and my husband's cousin. So they lived with us permanently, but there were always other people coming and going. We had a sort of like a bunkhouse, if you like, in the yard. We had a sort of little outbuilding, which had bunk beds in it, and members of the extended family were always kind of coming and going and using this place as a base, and people that were resident in town and working as night watchmen and so on. So it had kind of constant flow of Maasai community members through our place, and it was very much sort of shared living, shared parenting, like living in a conscious community, I guess you could say, to a point. And then to come back to that, this sort of, something that was an extended family by British standards, but still, in comparison to that, not very extended. And then, where I lived was quite isolated from kind of, I guess you could say, like-minded people my age. It's a village where there were a lot of older people, as is the place where I'm living now. There wasn't that sort of dynamic of arty, creative, kind of vibrant communities. And so yeah, that was challenging. And I like your phrase "traumatic loneliness" because I think it can be extremely traumatic. And was that was what you called it, traumatic loneliness?
Yeah, traumatic loneliness, and just kind of this sense of. I mean, I think of trauma as the great human equalizer. I mean, certainly anybody can be exposed to something that is. A kind of a very disturbing incident, everybody in any community at any time. And yet what you said about community and this kind of three-prong approach as a kind of a safety net. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about that, because that is so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've really just been developing over the past few months, is this particular approach of helping people to, first of all, reconnect with nature. I think the connection with nature is something that is really hardwired into us. I don't know if you're familiar with a book called Biophilia by E.O. Wilson, and it really says that genetically human beings are hardwired to be in nature, to have contact with other living beings, and that when we're not, we suffer mental health issues. And I think that's something that's got so overlooked in most Western communities. And so I've got a specific set of exercises that I've developed to help people reconnect with nature.
And what kind of exercises?
So the first one is called Finding Your Place, and it's finding your place in nature, but not just in the sense of finding a specific place to work with, although that is the starting point. You start with a place that's in your local neighborhood, somewhere that you can walk to, somewhere that's within easy reach. But then within that place, actually kind of rooting yourself in the earth and connecting with the sky and connecting with the trees around you and really feeling yourself as part of that place. And then the second part of it is called Finding Your Guides. And so actually finding trees, plants, animals, birds, whatever it might be within that space that actually say something to you, that have some kind of message for you. And that sounds a bit out there, but to actually think about, to reflect on the qualities of those particular beings, those particular creatures, and think, what is this telling me about who I am and where I am? And this is just a very sort of brief introduction, honestly.
Yes, exactly. It sounds very lovely, and such a beautiful way of connecting with yourself. And I think that is a big piece when people experience really, really tough things in life, is they kind of get disconnected with themselves. So this is extremely grounding. And then there's another element to it as well. You said there were three of them.
There were three, yeah. So the third one is Finding Your Balance, which is something very specifically about trying to connect with the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine energies, which are in everybody and also in all of nature. And so thinking about the qualities of what's sort of typically known as the masculine and feminine, obviously recognizing that women don't only have feminine qualities and men don't only have masculine qualities, but what we're all aiming at is a balance of both. And so you have these two archetypes, if you like, the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, and that by grounding yourself in your place in nature and between two objects, typically I would use trees, but they can be anything, that represent for you the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. I've been working with a British indigenous tradition, which sees, for example, the oak as masculine and the birch as feminine, and so I would typically work with an oak tree and a birch tree and kind of position myself between them and work with the balance of those energies. So I've got specific meditations, specific grounding exercises and breathing exercises and so on that I do in that program. It's a deep nature reconnection with the three elements: find your place, find your guides, and find your balance. And that is module 1, if you like, of the program.
Right. But I mean, it sounds like a lot of your vision of this program was also inspired by living so deeply in community and what that might have been like for you, given that it is so different than the culture that you came from.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I think the nature connection with the Maasai sort of goes without saying, really. It's just there is no such thing as nature, because that is life. And when we forget that when we're living in a Western society and we sort of shut ourselves indoors and we sit at a computer all day, we forget that for a lot of Indigenous communities, the reality of life is that you are outdoors and you are, inevitably interacting with the environment in everything that you do, and everything is this kind of dialogue between the human world and the more than human world. And I think when we do become disconnected from that in itself is a form of trauma. And so to heal the specific traumas that come from, for example, experiencing the death of somebody close to you, or seeing an accident at first hand, or whatever it might be, which are things that I did experience in Tanzania. Both of those were things that happened. But when you've got that community around you, both the human, it's a very close-knit community, and beyond that, the more than human community you're constantly out in and engaged with, it just makes it all so much easier to bear than when you're having to go through a similar thing in this culture.
Now, so that's the piece that I find quite compelling, because it is exactly aligned with much of what I see when people truly, truly suffer and then they're able to recover. It's also often because they have an interconnected network that creates a kind of a holding for that post-traumatic growth. And it sounds like that's something you were able to witness when you were in Tanzania as well.
Exactly, yes. And I've been very lucky, because I haven't only witnessed it in Tanzania, but also coming back from Tanzania. I've recently got involved with the Red Tent Network. And so we have a lovely women's group here in the New Forest, which really does provide that sort of holding space, sharing space. And that's something I'm now looking to take a little bit deeper. So we have our Red Tent group, which is lovely, and people share what's going on in their lives, and there's usually a topic of some sort. But what I'm looking to start now is fellowship groups, which actually go a step beyond that, and start with that sharing, but then have an inspiration circle, people sharing something that's inspired them in a more spiritual sense, and then some sort of sharing of food as well. And depending on the context, I'm trying to do this in several different settings. Probably one just for women, one just for men, and one mixed one. And so that's kind of where I'm going now, is to actually, as well as having the online programs, to start creating these live circles and live groups.
Right. Oh, that sounds marvelous, because it is so it's so crucial, I think, in terms of our evolution as human beings, and actually moving in a very healthy way to human communities. When I think about where people need to go and how they need to move forward to evolve as human beings and recover, a lot of it has to do with building a healthy human community. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and get a chance to understand who you are and what you're working on, and your beautiful program inspired by your own experiences. And thank you so very much, Gemma.
My pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you as well.
For more Ask Dr. Anna videos and information about post-traumatic growth and recovery, subscribe and like our YouTube videos at What is PTSD, or join us at previous video episodes in our playlist Ask Dr. Anna from the Traumatology Institute team.